Hello again. Welcome to our weekly podcast for studying the scriptures, namely the Gospels. We are in the Gospel of John, and we are going to be in the fourth chapter this week as we continue to study each of the chapters of the Gospels throughout 2026. So, if you would open your Bible with me to the fourth chapter of John, we will be reading verses 21 through 24. Hear the words of the Gospel of John. Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father seeks such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth." This story comes to us from the Gospel of John, talking about an interaction between Jesus and a Samaritan woman. Now, the Samaritan woman is talking about the fact that the Samaritans have a specific place that is not the Temple Mount, that they worship God. Of course, the Jewish people worship on the Temple Mount, with worshiping Yahweh there. There was a huge tension between these two peoples. Now, obviously, we get into a lot more about what those tensions were than just the fact that they worshiped in different places. There were lots of things that went on between the two. What Jesus is trying to explain to her is the fact that while there were tensions about the place of worship, that tension would be eliminated, because worship in the new tradition, in the tradition that Jesus was bringing about, would no longer be relegated to a specific location. Worship would be something that all people could do anywhere they chose and at any time they chose to do so. Worship was no longer confined. So when Jesus speaks to the woman and she says, "We worship here on the mountain, you worship there on the Temple Mount," Jesus turns it around and says, "But the time has now come when worship will happen neither in these places." And I would argue that Jesus is also saying in both of these places, because what Jesus is ultimately telling her is that the location of worship doesn't matter anymore. What truly matters is, are you worshiping? Where is your heart, right? How do you worship? Not where do you worship, but how do you worship? And even more important than that, why do you worship? Are you giving yourself? For those of us in the modern day, this would be the equivalent of saying, do you prefer traditional service or contemporary style service, right? This has been a war for decades at this point inside the church. And what Christ is telling us is the same thing that he tells the Samaritan woman. It doesn't matter if you've got an electric guitar, drum set, and lights, or if you have robes, an organ, and pews. The question isn't, where are you worshiping, but why are you worshiping and who are you worshiping, right? That's all that matters. So I have a couple of questions to ask you to help dive deeper into this passage. Spend some time on each of these questions. Number one, is my worship more about habit or about genuine devotion? Number two, how can I grow in worshiping God in both spirit and in truth? Number three, what would it look like to live a life of worship beyond Sunday? Or, if you are one person that worships on Wednesday nights, beyond Wednesday?